A very good evening and a warm welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena NTV Uganda studios. And we're going to be speaking about your child's mental health. The last many months have been particularly difficult for just about everybody and very different. And we've all been affected in one way or the other. So tonight we want to focus on children. We want to look at how the pandemic has affected them, but also how the daily, everyday circumstances affect them. And in the studio tonight, we have Ivas Atwine Kansime, who is a family therapist and counseling psychologist at International Center for Mental Health and Family Care. Thank you so much for joining us, Ivas.
Thank you so much for having me here.
All right.
Jasmine.
Ivas, you have 7 years in this field. Why the need for child mental health? Why the need for this conversation?
Thank you so much. The need for this conversation is, first of all, mental health is a big issue globally, in our continent, and here at home in Uganda and in our homes. But one of the reasons we have to have this conversation now is that it's an area that has been ignored. It's an area that has gone unnoticed. We know how to pay attention to physical health. We know how to pay attention to our physical health, but we don't know how to pay attention to our mental health. And one of the reasons is that we don't know.
We've had a number of conversations on mental health, and I think in a little way people are beginning to pay attention to it. What we're not really talking about, I think, is children.
Yeah.
We're speaking about it for adults.
Yeah.
Why should we give emphasis to the children?
We need to give emphasis to the children, first of all, because our children's health is extremely important. And any family that has a child, we are concerned about their future, their health, and our future lies in our children. So first of all, we need to pay attention to the health of our children. And as I said earlier, we know how to, we pay attention, we want our children to be healthy, but we pay attention to one side, the physical health, their success in class, but then we don't know how to address the issues of their lives, the core of their lives, which is mental health. As you know very well, mental health is the biggest component of our health. And if your physical health, if your mental health has gone wrong, or you're emotionally drained, you're emotionally deflated, then your physical health can't hold you. And so we need to understand that children struggle too, because there's a tendency for adults to believe that, oh, they are the ones that are stressed, they are struggling, they're working hard.
What
but they
could
think
possibly stress a child? What do you do all day? You play all day. How can you be stressed?
there's so much that stresses a child. Yeah. As you know very well, stress comes as a result of any external pressure.
Yeah.
So children have their lives too. They have so much they go through. Especially the starting point is the relationships at home, right? Now, for instance, if the home environment, if there is violence, if the parents' relationships are not going well, if they also have their own personal life, their own relationships. You know, relationships are stressful inherently. So they also have their own little lives, which we don't pay attention to. We think they are okay. We think they are living under the shadow of our lives, but they have their own lives to live. They have school. They have, there's so much that happens in the lives of children.
In the years that you've been in this field, what have you found to be the most common mental health problems among children?
Okay. Of course, the biggest now is depression, but usual anxiety. So when we talk about mental health difficulties or problems or disorders, we're talking about stress, we're talking anxiety, we're talking depression. So those three are the key areas that are affecting children.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What's the danger that you see there for us? If we're not having these conversations, if we're going business as usual and we don't take a moment to understand how these things affect children, what danger do you see?
So the danger we see, first of all, as I said, The danger I see is that we're living in denial. That's danger number one. And so we are assuming things are happening. That's number one. Then the danger number two is, and I think this is what is happening, most parents are confused. They don't understand what's happening. They see children act up. They see children plunge into what we call behavior issues as a reaction to the mental health challenges they are having. And they don't understand. Danger number three is that as long as we don't recognize what's happening and offer appropriate help to the children, then this is increasing, because you probably want to know that globally 20% of our adolescents are depressed. That is a scary statistic. 20%. Right? Now, when we talk about having a conversation now, it's so important, because then we are able to avert much of the challenges that are likely to worsen. And I also want to tell you that 50%, and this is research, 50% of all mental health challenges in adults start in early years. They start by age 14 on average. So if we don't respond now, then we are headed for darker days, because then we are going to have more challenges in the future, and so we need to have a conversation now.
Well, you say age 14, and somehow in my head I always thought it was even much earlier, from the things that you're seeing even when you're a child that stay with you, the trauma that you then carry along into your later years, and it stays, and you find you behave a certain way because of something that happened in your childhood. And I think that's why early childhood development is extremely important.
Absolutely, and you're right, because when children are young and they are exposed to certain things or certain hard conditions, certain difficult environments like violence, like parents separating or divorcing, like so much pressure, so many triggers, like pressure from school, and all these things are not addressed through what we call emotional cleansing, because just like we wash the body, we need to wash our mental parts. So when children are exposed to this, what I would explain with the 14 years is that that's a very crucial time when children have started making decisions on their own. This is an adolescent or teenage stage, which is a transition stage, where children have started, that's actually where much of the acting happens, because they feel like, oh, I'm an adult too, I can, and
make
so
my own decisions.
I can make my own decisions. But also you want to know that that stage in life, the teenage stage, there's so much pressure. There's so much, they're exposed to so much, there's change in the bodily changes, there is so much, their world is opening, they're seeing so much, and so it's a transition stage where they're exposed to so much, and so there's so much pressure. So you would call it like a breaking point here, where they go full-blown mental health difficulties. But as I agree with you, that area, right from the first stage, right from when children are so little, if they are experiencing pressure or stress factors or stress or emotional triggers, then they are affected anyway.
You know what they say about singing to your belly when you're pregnant, and if there's violence in the house at that point, the child is somehow in that environment and they're going to be affected. Okay. You've spoken briefly about what affects them, what affects children, what the triggers are, but I want us to speak a bit more into each of them. You've constantly mentioned, okay, well, let's start with the pandemic. How do you think that affected children's mental health?
Of course, the pandemic affected everyone, but for children's mental health, the whole disorientation that came with the pandemic. First of all, their whole schedule was distracted. They are in school and now they have to be home and they have to be there. They can't interact. You probably want to know that 90% of our health comes from relationships, right? Only 10% material. So what the pandemic did was to affect our relationships, and it affected children's relationships. Now, children benefit so much from interaction, and that's the first thing that was cut off. And so they are there.
And the physical touch.
And the physical touch. And the whole, conversation, the play, the everything. So definitely that was a big distraction. So that's one big stress factor that was there. Secondly, they're there and they are exposed to gadgets. So you know how gadgets are also a source of stress, right? In fact, during this season, I was speaking to so many audiences of parents and advising that they needed to go out and have the children just walk out and have what we call green nature therapy. Just go out and walk with the children. You don't have to do much. You can even be in your yard, or you can walk nearby and have that kind of therapy where children are off the gadgets and you experience that kind of nature therapy. So children were affected. And then, of course, there's so much pressure now. There's at home they are there with the parents and all the instructions we give. They are just basically, their world is so limited, and that can be stressful.
I mean, even when they're at home with the parents are on the computer working, so the child comes near, shh, don't talk. So I think even that one was another stress factor for them.
It was big time.
You're here, but you're not really here.
Absolutely, because parents are working from home. So even when parents are home, they are not attending to them.
Yeah.
And that's also a big source of nourishment for children, because when a child sees you, they don't care whether you work within TV or not. They know you as mom, not as a presenter. So they have expectations. So you're home, let's play. Then mom is not available. Dad, she's busy. And so we are telling them, shh. And so they are coming to your room and you're on Zoom. So you're saying, pray. So that alone is very stressful, because they just feel like their world is just narrowing by the second, and that can be really stressful.
You spoke about families, and I think one of the things we've seen also with the pandemic is a lot of families breaking up, and so it feels like an added, even without the pandemic, families are still breaking up, but how does that affect the children? I
want to tell you that the number one source of a child's health is parents' relationship. In fact, research shows us that a children's health, 80% of your child's health, 80% of your child's well-being, if you want to understand it, 80% of their success later in life. And when I mention success, I'm running a risk, because we define success differently. We think if a child graduates from school, they are successful. We think if they have got a good degree, they are successful. We think if they have money, they are successful. And that's not true. So I was making the point that 80% of your child's success is drawn, or their health and well-being and fulfillment and happiness. Those are the things we look for in life, right? They are drawn from a parent's marriage, right? So the moment the parental relationship is fractured, their lives are fractured. Now, I can provide all the statistics in the world, but I'll tell you that, again, research is showing us that children from broken families are more likely to be depressed. That's true, and I can explain it to you from a psychology standpoint. They are likely to do drugs. They are likely to drop out of school. They are likely to be violent, like all the dangerous behavior practices. And so every time a family relationship or parental relationship is affected, a child's sense of security is broken. And that's a major source of stress and depression for the children. Because, look, and I always tell parents that sit home and I know that there are so many reasons why marriages, I'm a marriage therapist, so I know that sometimes marriages breaking is inevitable. But of course, I always encourage, please, as much as possible, place your marriage in a bigger picture so that you're also considerate of these children's lives. So the moment a parent's marriage is affected, their relationship, even if you don't say anything, they are able to detect it. And when you have a good relationship, even if you don't say anything, you've already provided 80% of their nourishment in life. That's really big time.
Evas, we're going to take a short break, and we'll speak more a bit of that when we return. Let's take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Tonight we're talking about your child's mental health, and I am in the studio with Evas Atwine Kansime, who is a family therapist and counseling psychologist. And you were speaking about families breaking up and how that affects children. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you also mentioned is life must happen, and it's going to happen, anyway. But how do you protect the children even as life happens mm-hmm. to you? Mm-hmm. How do you ensure that, mm-hmm. With whatever it is you're dealing with, mm-hmm. you are covering the children, or at the very least you're giving them attention and the kind of support that they need? Actually, we're going to that question, and yet we haven't yet finished the other triggers. But let's take that first.
Let's take that. Okay. So first of all, let me just build up on the point I made earlier. When I say marriage, let's call it relationship. Okay? So a parent's relationship is extremely important in the lives of children because it's a cover, it's a protection. And so when children see the parents relate well, even if you don't say anything, they've already drawn they feel secure. And why do we get stressed? It's because we feel insecure, we feel our security threatened. And so that's where children draw all these insecurity and uncertainty, and they can't figure out where they are going. So that's important. Now, if life happens, as it will always happen, the child is not able to have both parents in the same place, but your relationship is extremely important. One of the things that we advise parents to do is to make sure that you're not exposing, if for instance you're not able to be together for one reason or another, first of all, don't expose these children to your deeper conflicts and issues, right? So you protect them and give them information, but filter it and make sure that you're not exposing them to the fight. Some parents, when they are having challenges, they want to go to the children and use them as part of the fight, or to show, to share information, deeper information, which they are not able to process. All they know is that mommy is good and daddy is good. But then we go to them and say, your dad is really bad and all this, imagine they do this. So there are certain things they are not able to process. And so you protect them at that point to make sure that you're not giving them so much information that, again, they are not able to process. Secondly,
or they don't know what to do
with it. Secondly, to make sure that you keep civil, because as much as possible, I've witnessed a number of custody struggles and all that, and we know that every time a relationship doesn't go well, there are certain emotions we have to process, but then we advise that as much as possible, make sure that your children do not become a victim of this. Yeah. And you ensure that you keep civil, knowing that your children need both the dad and the mom, right? And I've seen a number of people put all these restrictions and say, you'll not see my children, you'll not do this, but you're not helping them. What you need to do is to make sure that there is a civil relationship where children are able to access mom, access dad, because as I always mention, there is a role that each one of us plays in the lives of children. Unfortunately, whenever that happens, and again, I've witnessed so much conflict and so much breakups, people go with this sense of, I'll take care of the children. But if you check, taking care, we are thinking about material things. Material things are just 10% of life. 90% is relationships, and they need this relationship. There's what a child benefits from a dad, which is a sense of authority. There is so much they benefit from dad. So interacting there, and the love, and that kind of love from a dad. So there is a contribution dad makes in the lives of children. Of course, when there is a breakup, children tend to lose trust because they've been trusting adults under whose care and cover they have been, and all of a sudden they realize actually the adults are not strong enough to keep this. They realize, hey, so you mean these people can fail? Remember, our children look at us as superheroes, if you wish. And so we are gods to them. They know that mommy is in charge. They know daddy's in charge. So when a marriage breaks or a relationship breaks, there is a bit of trust they lose. But then when you keep together, you're creating, you're giving them a message that, first of all, you can separate and keep sane. You can separate and keep normal. I always tell people that, by the way, even these breakups, we can use them to teach children forgiveness. It's an opportunity to teach them that life can go on even when people don't agree. So that's very, very important. So it's important that we don't put a lot of drama and emotional reaction, which is likely to affect the lives of the children. And then we stop them from seeing one of the parents, and then we say, we are okay, we shall manage. That's not what it is. So we need to keep okay and make sure that we are mindful of the fact that these children can only process certain things.
Many families have a maid or a nanny, another caregiver at any point. And usually their attachments to children. When you're constantly changing these people that they are attached to, what happens? How does that affect a child?
Yeah. You see, I want to go back to the point I started with to say, the reason we experience stress and confusion and mental health disorders is because our sense of, we have so much pressure, our sense of security is affected. And then relationships. When we have consistent, secure relationships, then we are healthy on the inside. We feel okay, we feel we are in charge, we feel we are protected. Now, if we keep changing maids and house helps, we need to know that every time a child, you bring a maid to the house, a child tries to attach emotionally to this person. Some of them are calling them auntie, and some of the things that are happening, they don't know them, they see them. Sometimes, of course, they give us information on what is happening, we get the signals from them. But as much as possible, of course, we need to be mindful that every time you're changing maids, and a child was relating with Auntie Esther today, tomorrow is Auntie Irene, another day, they get confused. They get confused, and they also don't know how to, they don't know their world. Every other time they are trying to develop a new relationship.
You cut it short.
Yeah.
Keep cutting.
Yeah. So you keep cutting it short, and they're like, what's happening? So that sense of uncertainty affects them.
Okay. I thought it was interesting to speak about that, because I see it happen quite a bit, and it's not even that the parents are just changing maids because they want to. It's just the way that it is. But what do you do in those circumstances to help them? How do you prepare them for the changes that are coming, that are well beyond your control?
Yeah, sure. Information is everything. We always have to give children information. And as I told you earlier, when we give information, we don't have to give all the details, but we have to, as much as possible, involve our children. One of the things that affect children's mental health is to experience changes they weren't mentally prepared for. So including changing school, like decisions that affect them. And so one of the things I advise parents, and I also do, is to make sure that even when we are changing a maid, I tell the children. And you'll tell them and say, we are, Auntie Winnie is going, and they'll say, why, mommy? Because they weren't exposed to so much. But you've probably also, parents out there, you've experienced a situation where children go like, they give you information after this, they've known this person is going, they say, by the way, she was this, and by the way, this, which they were not able to tell. But it's so important to involve your children and tell them this is going to happen. We probably will not have a maid for the next couple of days. We have to get involved. If they are little, still you know how much information you can give them. But as much as possible, involve your children. Even when you're making changes around their school, you know, we drive children to a different school and they weren't aware and we haven't prepared them. That is like, and we forget that in that place they've already attached.
Yeah.
So it's so important. That's why we were talking about just ignore. We think children will just adapt and we don't have to worry about them. It's so important that we are mindful of the fact that they need mental stability. Every time their mental stability is affected, then they are affected. And because they are not able to engage, and some of the parents don't even give them a platform to share their frustration. We just think, oh, they are fine.
I've made the decision.
I've made the decision. I'm the parent in this home. We even introduce ourselves to them and say, I'm the dad. You know, as if they didn't know you were. So we need to know that children have lives too.
How do you know that something is happening with my child? That something has gone wrong?
That's extremely important. And parents, please pay attention to this, because most of the time children manifest symptoms of stress, anxiety and depression, and parents are totally clueless. Up to a point when a child loses it, then they come out and say, I didn't see this happening. Number one, when your child gets withdrawn, right, you'll be able to, I mean, we know our children. We know those who are, you know, very friendly, they come out, they share freely. All of a sudden, they have shut down.
They're constantly in their room. You go somewhere,
they have
earphones
they
and
have
headphones
earphones.
on. Okay.
They don't want to talk. And then, most of the time, we follow them in their earphone world and say, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with you? You know?
I'm going to throw away these things.
I'm going to throw everything. So we need, first of all, to keep an eye on change in behavior. So how is this person acting different? And when you see that, don't come out authoritarian. Don't be rough. Just come. Remember, this person is already stressed. And that's every time you come out rough with so much energy, negative energy, they're going to shut down on you. And most parents are actually stranded with teenagers. I hope we have an opportunity to talk about teenagers one of these days. We don't know. We don't know that teenagers, they get to a point and they withdraw because they've gotten into a stage where they are trying to shatter their world. And so they're thinking about so many things. We've told them how they need to be doctors. They're wondering, is that where I want to go? They have so much pressure. They have bodily changes. They have hormonal stuff, all things happening. And then they are exposed to other external issues. So they shut down. They're trying to be in their world to think, and that's when we are following them. So we need to understand that when you go to this child, you need to ask the simple question, is everything okay? Are you okay? When you ask that question, any person, they hear, this person cares. So they hear care. So if we want to connect with our children, we need to connect at that level, because when you care, then somebody is interested and connects with you.
Evas, let's take another short break.
Sure.
And we'll continue that conversation when we return.
Sure.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, NTV Uganda studios, and we're speaking about your child's mental health. Eva, you were speaking about how to notice that something is wrong. How do you deal with aggression? You're speaking about a teenager who is now acting up, and you know, they are withdrawn, but then I know that sometimes they get aggressive, especially if you're maybe dealing with a situation, the parents, and you know, they're just trying to find their own way, and they start speaking back. They start, you know, it's very difficult also, I think, for a parent to come down to the point of care. You care, but
Sure.
how do you show that care when the child is going out of their way to...
Okay. It's very difficult. It's very difficult when a child disrespects you. Any parent out there would want their child to respect them. And when a child responds to a parent with aggression, it's absolutely hard to deal with. But my advice to you is not to also respond with aggression, because you'll end nowhere. Remember this child, especially when you're dealing with a teenager. This teenager is in a world where they think they're actually older than a parent. In their mind, they've grown old enough to even be older than their parent. They live in that world, which we need to understand. And so be able to approach them with, first of all, come from a place of knowledge. And I encourage all parents, please check out, there's so much information about teenagehood. It's a very interesting stage, and you probably won't get most of the younger ones are still obedient, they're okay, but we get that aggression from children who have grown a little bit, who are in this teenage adolescent stage. And so when you understand what they're dealing with in their world, then you're not going to be super offended, and you're also going to not give them what we call giving them an opportunity to disrespect you. Now, my advice to parents is, usually at this stage, you need to change strategy, because most of us have come from a place of authoritarian, we give orders. Most teenagers, by the time they make it to teenagehood, they're already angry. They hate how you're treating them, and they are hoping for a point when they can also be as old and speak back to you. So that's where most of them pick the concept of aggression, because they believe you are a man, I'm a man, so what are you saying?
Yeah.
And especially when boys who are being raised, for instance, they've been growing with a mom. At this point, they're saying, I'm a man, you're a woman, right? So we need to understand the psychology of some of these stages and be able, but I encourage parents generally, please change strategy. If you see your child has acted aggressive, don't go aggressive. You're going to lose it.
Someone has to be the adult in the room.
Yeah, one of you has to be the big boy in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where should the learning be for parents, for caregivers, you know, grandmothers, whoever has the responsibility of a child? Where should the learning be for things like this? There are classes for maternity, there are classes for, you know, the first few days of, you know, the baby is born. But later on in life, you're figuring it all out as you go. You're learning from TV, you're learning from what you were taught. Is this important that there should be some kind of lesson on parenting?
Yeah. I'll tell you what.
And especially on mental health and what it does.
You see, I'll tell you that, especially in this part of the world, I think much of it is figuring out. You've talked about maternal, classes and all. I wonder how many of us...
Okay, yes.
You get me?
Yeah.
You see, life improvement and learning, through learning, is so important, but we give it very little attention. And we think much of it will just figure it out. Now, unfortunately, parenting is a skill, right? Being a dad and a mom, that's okay. That's natural. But to be a parent is a skill. And this skill is a learned skill. Now, we have all the opportunities. There are several, we run a parenting program. We've been running a parenting program at Kibera Country Club until we had the lockdown. But we are running online parenting classes. But people don't think this is important. And they think we think we know, or we think we're going to figure it out until we get stuck. So some of these things need to be understood. Like the psychology of child development, that is important for parents to get, because otherwise we make mistakes which we could avoid. And then later on, when we are stuck, we think the problem is the children. We think that now I hear children of these days, and I've already told parents, there's no parent called these days. They are not children of these days. Their children are nurtured. You know, I'm sure you probably know that we, and I usually use this this perspective, what we call the tiger human being perspective. A tiger, you probably know that it is born with 90% of what they need to be a good tiger. And mother tiger and father tiger, they only need to do 10% to make it, you know, like a wonderful tiger. A human being is only born with 10% of what they need to be a good human being. 10. Now, 80% is acquired through parental nurturing. 80% of who you are, of who I am, is attained through parenting. That's how powerful parenting is.
That's very scary.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, and it needs to go out there. We need to know that we shape 80% this child. They are born with only 10%. Now, you want to know where the
10% is.
The 10% is human and 90% is tiger.
Okay.
Right. Now, so 80% is acquired through parenting, right? So you get 90.
The 10%.
10% is acquired through life improvement.
So you going out of your way to learn
certain things.
Okay.
So if a child misses this, now you had better do a good job. So I tell parents, please don't figure it out. And most of the time we take comfort in the fact that, oh, we are providing. And I hear parents who say, oh, I've done everything. I've given this child everything. Check. Most of the time we are looking at material, which I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But you see, a human being is 90% non-material, is mental health, which mental health needs to be nurtured. Now, when a parent doesn't know and you're only figuring things out, you're likely not to do a good job. So I encourage parents, please check. We have parenting classes at our organization. We have character building programs for children. These are things we need to invest in deliberately and make sure that we create time for it in addition to the work that we are doing. Because ultimately, when our children go well, we are well. Most of us can't retire peacefully because we are trying to do parenting in old age, and it's already too late. Most of the time at that point, we are dealing with symptoms.
Later in life, when you're trying to connect to children who you are emotionally detached from for so many years, and it's almost impossible.
They don't care.
Yeah.
You see, one of the things that parents need to know is that we don't connect with people because we are related to them. No, we connect with people because we have a relationship.
Yeah.
And a relationship, again, Karunji, I hope this conversation continues. Parents need to know what draws a child to you. It's not because you pay for them school fees in an international school. They don't care. They don't. I haven't had children have memories of, oh, daddy paid. They don't care about that. That's not appealing. Life is not in those things. They have memories of, oh, we spent time with daddy at the farm, or we worked with this, we did, oh, do you remember when we played? That's where life lies. And that's where emotional connection is. Okay. And children connect to us based on how we make them feel.
Eva, we're running out of time. This is a very interesting conversation. So I want us to close in about 3 minutes. Where is help for the children? Where is help for parents? And what's a quick step you can even just, you're sitting at home and you're watching this show and you're thinking, what is a quick step I can do to just start thinking about changing maybe the way I've been doing things?
Let me begin with help for the parents. I've already mentioned that use every opportunity to learn. Just get knowledge about parenting. There are all manner of resources everywhere, even on internet. Just be interested, because we need to do a good job. And a good job, you're not just going to do it because you have a child and you're older. No. So be interested in getting knowledge. That's number one. Number two, when these programs come up, like we have a parenting program online, please be interested. Invest in that and learn. Learn from child psychologists, learn, there are certain things, learn proper parenting skills. One of the things, again, I've told you that we are teaching parents is to know which parenting style is likely to give you a certain kind of child. You need to have that knowledge. So be interested, participate in those programs. And it could be ours, it could be other people. Just be interested in getting that help. But also I want to encourage parents, in case you're stuck, parenting is a hard job. It's absolutely hard. Please seek help. Come to us, come to any psychologist, go to a therapist, find help, go to life coaches, let them help you in terms of giving you skills on how you can deal. If your
There's
child,
no shame in seeking help.
No, it isn't. And people think help is for the weak. No, help is for the civilized. You know that you need it and you're strong. You're glad to go for it. So for parents, I want to encourage you, please speak to someone. If you're stranded, don't start labeling your child problematic and all that, and you give up on them. And I hear parents who are saying, me, I've given up. Children of these days, don't send your child to a parent called these days. You're the parent. So you're the parent and you can be helped.
All right.
Then for children, I encourage parents, please help your children to seek help, because they also need help. There are certain things your children won't tell you, but they can share with a counselor.
If they're allowed to go to a counselor.
If they are allowed, depending on how you tell them. Sometimes they're like, dress up and we go. I have to take you to a counselor. You understand? But depending on how you approach a child. Now, that requires high-level humility, which most parents can't go to. They go like, I'm working, then I go into this dumb place to beg a child. But you have to know that ultimately, your child's health, your child's well-being is going to give you a lot of peace later on, and now and later on. So you need to invest in that. Help them to speak to someone.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm at home, I'm watching, and I need to change my ways. Where do I start from?
Start from personal reflection, but then also talk to someone professional. Reach out. Numbers are there. We have a whole group of therapists who can speak to you. So if you're confused, don't just get lost in confusion. Reach out to someone and they can help you. People need to understand the benefits of seeking therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're looking at me and telling me time is out. But if I'm at home, I'm watching, and I'm thinking, that's not for me. Me, I'm a good parent. I provide, I do whatever it is. I don't know what she's talking about. Those bad parents out there need to check themselves. What are you telling me?
I'm telling you that if you're providing, you're going away with 10%. Your child's life is life is way beyond eating and drinking. So don't take comfort in the fact that your children are eating and drinking. Right. It's not enough.
Thank you very much, Ivas. Ivas Atwine Kansime is a family therapist and counseling psychologist with the International Center for Mental Health and Family Care. Thank you so much for taking the time to share these insights with us, and I hope the parents and children out there watching have been listening and taking in what you've said. That brings us to the end of our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition.